We will draw this shiny, beautiful bow together. And while we are drawing this, I will try to give you some tips on 3D object drawing. The first thing we need to be careful about is selecting the right colors. As you can see in this bow, I see so many different shades of red. I see some brown, some black, white, pink, you know, all these colors exist on this bow. So it is important to list them first before you start your drawing. The second most important thing is drawing on a toned paper. I talked about toned papers in this video. If you want to watch it after this video, it is on the right top for you. Toned paper is great because it literally brings the object to even more closer to the audience. It brings the object to the viewer's focus. Let me show you an example. When I did this drawing of a dog, I was using charcoal, and you can see that when the background is white, the dog is there, but it's not that prominent. But when I color the background black, you can see that the dog pops out even more and the shade becomes lighter. So this is exactly what toned paper does. The object becomes more obvious, more prominent when we finish our drawing. Another toned paper drawing that I did was a portrait of 10 friends from Cure Eye. If you haven't watched that, I'm also putting the link on the right for you. But you can see that the portrait even comes closer and it becomes more obvious to the viewer. Now, what is our strategy? Our strategy is to focus on a single area. What do I mean by single area? Here is a section of the bowl that I'm going to draw now, and you can see the lines when you look closer. All these lines and triangles are helping me to focus. Let me show you one more time. I made them disappear and I'm gonna bring them again so you can see better. So all these lines exist there, and once we put them in, then we look in the triangles and you see the transition from lighter to darker red and even like some brown there. So if we focus section by section, just like this, then our job becomes less overwhelming. In this way, we shade more accurately as well, because we are not looking at the whole object and getting confused. We are focusing our attention on a single section at a time. Now you see me blending all these different colors and then adding the black for the darkest parts and adding white for the lightest part of this section. Speaking of white and black, let's talk about shadows and highlights. It's all about the game of light, isn't it? So how do we understand an object is bent? Let's look. In this example, you can see that I folded my paper, so you can see the top part is the brightest part, whereas when we go further from the light source towards the bottom of the page, then we have darker shade. This is how we give the effect of folds. So this is why we are doing the fold here by adding the lightest part at the top where the light reflects, and where the wings are coming down, we have a darker shade. Now, another strategy, going step by step. I already told you to focus on a single section at a time, but then you have to, I think, follow an order. You have to make a plan. For example, you can say that, just like I did, I'm going to go from top left to the bottom right, and I'm going to go one by one, add all these folds together to form a nice bow in the end. Here you can see that I added all these little shadows and highlights and all different colorings one by one as I see them in the photo. Why is it important to do this step by step? Because if you try to draw the whole thing at once, you're gonna feel really overwhelmed. I want you to enjoy your drawing. Straight lines and sharp edges. So when you're drawing objects, you have to have straight lines. These are not human or animal portraits. Even you might have to use your ruler sometimes. In order to draw straight lines, I highly recommend you to get support from the desk with your hand and then draw it, because otherwise your hands may shake, and once you hesitate, your lines might not be straight enough, and these are colored pencils, so it's very hard to erase them as well. This is why it is important to put your hand down on the paper and on your desk and draw very slowly all those straight lines and fill them in one by one carefully. Just like I'm doing it right here. Make sure that the paper color is not showing, which means you need to put as much pigment as possible on your paper. Again, that means you need to make a lot of layers. Here you see me, for example, after adding all my layers, I burnish them. This way, all the gaps are closed very nicely and we have a smooth looking surface. I use Prismacolor, which are wax-based colored pencils. It makes it much easier to blend, but also it is harder to layer sometimes after you burnish them. Now our focus is this section. I added all these colors. I wanted to slow down a bit and wanted to show you how I closed all those gaps with my colorless blender pencil. Isn't this amazing? And it's so quick as well. So I'm applying all the strategies here that I told you. I am adding all the colors, all these different colors. I'm adding the black and white in the end, and I'm blending with my colorless blender, and I go step by step. So I'm following all these strategies that I told you already, and we are coming to an end. But we are not finished yet because we have to add one more thing. Guess what it is? The shadows. We need to add the shadows to give a 3D effect. Why shadows are important? If you look at those 4 balls at the top, you see that the shadows make them look like they're on the surface. But once we give some distance between the balls and the shadows, it gives us the feeling that they're actually floating. The only reason we are feeling this way is due to the location of the shadows and the objects relative to each other. Here you see the shadows, and we need to add these shadows with our gray and maybe light brown. I'm using circular motions. I'm not putting any pressure at all, and we need to make sure that we are not pressing on our paper because this needs to be light. The borders needs to be a little bit more faded instead of sharp edges. One thing you need to be careful about is because of the tone paper doesn't have much tooth, it's going to be difficult to erase all these colored pigments from your paper. So I highly recommend you to plan ahead before you put any kind of color on your tone paper. It looks already perfect. I really love this bow. I hope you enjoyed this drawing as much as I did. After finishing your drawing, don't forget to add the last touches, which are usually black and white. So add more shadow and more highlight until you are happy with your drawing. If you want the full tutorial of this bow drawing, it is on my Patreon, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Thanks for watching my video. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe. And for my real-time narrated tutorials, visit my Patreon, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. Stay with art and love.